guys, welcome back to the Any Thoughts podcast. I am your host for today, and Dan is here with me. How you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing pretty good. It's hot down here, but, we're making it.
Trying not to die of heat stroke, but we're trying to make it. Just
Yay.
don't leave your pets outside very long.
Yay, the South.
Yeah, in summer.
In the summer.
Okay, well, and while we're trying to recover from walking and from heat stroke, let's talk about our topic for today, which is part 1 of 2. So today we are covering vacation, and Dan gets to cover his dream vacation first.
So this kind of came up, I guess, because Becca had the idea of, just spitballing ideas and stuff, I guess, for episodes, and we've got a couple other things lined up, I think, after this topic, but we just kind of discussed, hey, what if, you could go anywhere that you wanted to for, a year, right? So this is kind of our quote-unquote dream vacations, right? So, where you would go, the things you would see, stuff like that. So if you don't know this about me, I'm a big, lover of history. For me, it was kind of a debate between a lot of places, right? Because, I thought about, maybe Israel would be cool because, the biblical history and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, well, Japan would be really cool because there's, the history side of it, but then there's all the cool, culture-y stuff, the anime and all that kind of cool stuff, and, the bullet trains and just all that kind of stuff that you could see, and even the military history that's there. And then, for me, one that I thought of that would be cool would be, the Netherlands.
I kind of want to take a vacation there as well.
Well, and with the Netherlands, I actually have family that's still actually there. I have relatives that live there. And there's, a house that's over there that's, 300 or 400 years old that, my ancestors were, born in that house and stuff. And it's still there standing, so that's kind of cool. But
I've got a picture of that house or anything?
Somewhere, yeah, it's buried.
It's buried. Forget it.
I'd have to go looking for it, and it might take me a while to find that. But it's a really cool, low-walled, high-roofed, thatched or type house. It's kind of cool. Very late 1600s ish looking. But then I was like, well, France has a lot of cool stuff as well, a lot of history, and I love history. Then there's the whole, there's really awesome places in France, outside of the normal tourist. Well, I guess the one I'm about to mention is a tourist destination, but it's one of the fancy places, the French Riviera. So you can go there and just chill on the beaches and hang out. And I know Becca loves beaches.
I do. I love beaches.
But if you notice the theme, all of them involve history, right? So I have this one specific place and time that I guess it's not a specific time necessarily, it's a range of time. My choice of dream destination would be England and Ireland. I couldn't decide between England and or Ireland, so I had to group them both together.
So it would be 6 months in England, 6 months in Ireland, probably.
Maybe, I don't know. It might be a 2-year vacation. I don't even know.
So this is living. This is no longer vacation.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. It would take us a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
See, the thing is I would love to one day go overseas because I've never left this country before. I don't have a passport or anything like that.
I don't
either. The problem is, if you're going to leave the country and it's not for business reasons and it's for vacation reasons,
right,
you better make the most of it if it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So we're going to cover England and Ireland today is where you want to go. So tell me about it. What do you want to see? What do you want to do?
So it kind of boils down to why that one specifically, right? Because again, all of them have all the ones I listed have this history aspect to them, but that one specifically, I'm just fascinated with from the pre-Roman history. Honestly, from Neolithic period, I guess, if you want to call it that. Almost prehistory, if you will, to about like the 14 or 1500s. That period there is just so interesting because you get to see how an entire like area, the culture and the landscape itself even shifted several times over. First, the Britons had it, and then the Saxons came in and pushed them out, and then you had the Angles coming in at the same time, and then the Norman invasion in 1066, and then you get to see how the English culture formed essentially, because really, like, the English culture we know today was not a thing like even 600 years ago. Like, it wasn't what it is now. You see like these cultures form out of these other cultures. So like going along with why I chose it, right, is like, what would I want to see when I'm there? Because there's just so much stuff. And like I would want to see some of the newer stuff, like that giant pickle looking building. I don't know if you've ever seen that. No. It's kind of like, a lot of people say it's like a really ugly building, but it's in downtown area of like London there. I can't remember what the heck it's actually called. But then, like go see like the Eye of London too, like the big huge Ferris wheel. I don't know if I'd ride it.
No, you. So
I'm kind of terrified of heights a little bit, but I think it'd be cool to at least see some of those newer things. But then, really, what I want to see is like all of the history stuff, right? So and this ties back into like my genealogy and
why do I feel like you would be on those stacked buses and be the one that, welcome today's tour? Yeah. Like you could stand there and do the tour, I think.
Maybe. I don't know.
Or you would have to be like, the lady would be up there. If you look on your left, you will see the Eiffel Tower. If you're in France. And Dan's like, I know all kinds of stuff about it. I'm raising my hand. I'll tell you. But
yeah, so there's some various castles, and I've got pictures of them pulled up. And if the editor, aka me, does this correctly, you guys will be able to see them too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show Becca so I can kind of get her
if you guys watch the YouTube video.
Reaction. Yeah. So if you're on the podcast, this isn't there, but you can go look it up for yourself, or you can go over to YouTube and find our channel. But anyways, so like there's some various castles, and originally I was gonna like list all these places and talk about them, and I was like, number one, people are gonna hate that, so I saved you guys the hassle of having to deal with that, because I love history, not everyone does. So, but like some of the places I want to go see, and I won't give you like huge histories about them, because again, people aren't necessarily interested in that. But a couple of them, there's a couple castles that I want to go see. These are the two that I listed. They actually belonged to an ancestor of mine that was a cousin of William the Conqueror and was granted these lands. But there's the Castle of Clare, which, interesting point of fact, actually belonged to, at one point, granted, a descendant of this ancestor of mine. So she's technically related to me, but I think it's distant related. Her name was Elizabeth de Clare, and she was actually in the 14th century, was like the richest woman in at least in England, but probably all of Europe.
So she was the richest woman, and her last name was Declare. Did she declare she was the richest woman herself? Or is that just because of her last name?
No, it's just because of who she was and how she was tied to the king and everything. Because the Declare family at one point in time was very well-to-do, and I think they're still decent, but not what they used to be. But anyways, this here is the remnants of Clare Castle. Let me show you. So this is the wall, and this thing was built in 1095.
You know what that looks like? It looks like a rock climbing wall.
Oh yeah?
It does.
But think about it. That was built in 1095 and it's still standing. That's the only part of it left, mind you. But
I wonder what it looked like originally.
It was this huge castle that was kind of built up on this. You can kind of see the castle part would have been up on this hill, and then there'd have been a lower manor area down here.
It looks like it's built out of dirt.
Well, no, that is the that's the earthworks.
I know.
And then
which is why it looks like it's built out of dirt.
Yes, that's what earthworks means.
No. Oh, so it wasn't actual buildings?
No. There was buildings on top of this, but those aren't there anymore.
Oh, I see.
Right. So like the tower was up here. I don't. Hopefully, I'll be able to put all these pictures in there since I'm telling in that much detail. But like, yeah, the tower would have been like this huge tower that would have came up off of this. You know.
I hope they include maps when you go see this of what it originally looked like, so you're not confused.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. Well, this is like one of the older maps of it. So you get kind of a layout, so to speak, of how the grounds were laid out essentially. And then same guy owned another castle called Tonbridge Castle. I'm gonna close these tabs as we go.
Ooh.
So this one's more of like a traditional castle looking castle, right?
Sort of, but tied to a mansion.
Yeah, so that
it's weird.
So this mansion piece was built added on later, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it's cool though. I like how they built onto it.
This is the original gatehouse from the 1100s, and then this castle was built in the mansion-y part was built in like the 1700s, I think. But then there's some famous castles that I want to go see as well. So this castle here is called Blarney Castle, and you may have heard of that because everyone wants to go kiss the Blarney Stone in Ireland.
No, I thought for a second you said Barney as Barney the dinosaur.
Barney? Yeah, this is Barney's castle. This is where the pink dinosaur lives.
Pinky purple?
Yeah, whatever he is. I don't know. I never watched that show.
Barney is a dinosaur.
You're
welcome.
Save me.
Hey, I grew up on Barney. I had a Barney and a baby bop that I used to carry around everywhere.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't grow up on Barney. I grew up on Sesame Street.
Oh, I watched Sesame Street too.
So
anyway, sorry.
But
back on topic.
Yeah. So this is Blarney Castle, where the Blarney Stone is that everyone goes to Ireland to kiss. It gives you good luck or whatever.
Is that what it's for?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, actually, technically, by kissing the Blarney Stone, you're supposed to be granted the gift of gab.
Talking?
Yeah. Which is why everyone in Ireland talks so much.
No, you're going to be given the gift of death from all the germs on it.
Sure.
The gift of COVID.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Don't get me started on that.
Sorry.
But, anyways, I do want to go see this because even, just looking at it, without the fact that it's, where the Blarney Stone is and all that.
I still hear Barney.
Looking at it, it's a very cool looking castle. It's got this tower on the side and this huge main tower piece. It's very castle-esque, And then there's this one, which is Kilkenny Castle, which is also...
I love the color of it. Was that the original color, or did it fade to that?
No. I think it's pretty close to the original.
Wow.
Now, this one's not quite as old as some of them.
No, you can tell it's not.
Yeah, I think this one... Well, no, it dates back to 1195. So compared to the other couple, especially the ruined ones, I mean, it's 100 years newer, I guess.
Mm.
But it's probably also been built slightly in some stages, and you can tell just by looking at it that it's been renovated and upgraded because it's got modern windows. Well, I say modern, but it's got actual windows in it,
instead of holes.
Yeah, back in the day, this wouldn't have necessarily. Well, it would have still been
a glass, but not that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been this type of window, right? It would have been different.
They either probably broke or just thought it looked better.
Well, yeah, this definitely looks way better. This is a very famous castle called Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. It's built on this...
That's it?
Yeah, it's
Holy cow, it's huge!
It's built on top of what's called Castle Rock. Castle Rock is basically... They've done some studies, and essentially they've figured out that this thing has been...
Do they have Schoolhouse Rock around here too?
Schoolhouse Rock is actually in the U.S.
Oh, okay. I was
that's how we learn how bills are.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was making a joke and then I sounded like an idiot.
Anyways.
It's built on a mountainside.
Yeah, well, so it's actually a volcanic rock, and they've done studies, and human civilization has been using this since, like, I think like 2,000 or 3,000 BC. So it's been, used by humans for a long time. And then in the, whenever this thing was built, let's see what it says here. So it's been occupied since the Iron Age, but this one was built in the 12th century, so the 1100s. Kind of a cool looking castle, and it's very, like...
How big is it?
Recognizable. Let me see if I can...
It's huge.
I wasn't prepared for questions of how big it is.
Well, in the first picture you showed me, I thought it wasn't that big, and then you showed me the entire thing.
That's just a picture of, like, the barracks, which were built in, according to this, 1799. That first picture.
Wow.
It's one of those castles that's just been kind of like...
I just wonder how
added on, and added on, and added on.
Huh. Ooh, a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, is that the inside?
That's the interior of the Great Hall.
Wow. Guys, what's the name of this again? You got to look up some pictures of this thing.
Edinburgh Castle.
It's cool on the inside. I'm going full Southern over here. The movies that I like to watch and shows I like to watch are all like fantasy and like castles and stuff. So this is, for me, this is really cool.
Here's what it looks like at night lit up.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
It kind of reminds me of that castle they used Spy X Family, where they did that thing. It looks like it, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
I wonder if this is a similar one that they used.
I don't know.
That would be kind of funny if they based it on one of these.
There's some other castles that I'm interested in. Again, there's a lot of castles, so like...
I don't see a castle, I see stairs.
Yeah, well, this is remnants. So a lot of what's there to see that's history is going to be like types of castles, right? Now there is some other stuff that we'll talk about, but another thing that I love about the English and the Irish, really, actually both, is like their legends, and probably the most famous one is King Arthur, right? Mm-hmm. So this castle and the next one are both tied, and granted both of them are like ruins of castles, but they're tied to the Arthurian legends. So this is, I'm going to try to pronounce this without screwing it up, but it's called Tintagel Castle. Mm-hmm. And it's actually in the region of Cornwall. And so like you can see here, like,
is that the south?
Yeah, so that's that southern peninsula that kind of sticks off and points like, towards France and Spain, I guess, so to speak. But this is like remnants of the walls of this castle, and you can see how
there's not much left.
Kind of built up on like this cliff edge, right? But this castle it's tied to Arthur, but like it's not his castle, because they've actually researched that this one was built by I forget who this one was built by, but it was actually built in like the 13th century, which would have been the 1200s, and so if it was an Arthurian castle, it would have been like significantly older, probably, closer to like 600 years older than that even. But they've also found out that there's like a bunch of like what's called Romano-British stuff there, which is like stuff that was tied to when Rome occupied Britain. So there's all these like Roman artifacts that are in this area as well, which they think means that it's obviously been occupied for a long time. And it probably ties back to the tribe known as the Dromoni. I don't know. I'm not super good with
I think you said it right the first time.
Pronunciations, but probably tied back to one of the kings from back then. And it was one of his, like, where he kind of ruled from.
There's a door left?
Yeah, so there's this Victorian courtyard area. And there's, like, these walls here.
Yeah, standing. I saw the walls, but I didn't know there was a part with a door left. That's kind of cool. And
there's this really crazy bridge to cross over to get up to it there.
That's not a bridge, that's stairs.
Well, that is stairs, yeah. And this is the view out. That's like a hotel thing in the background.
Huh.
And then there's this crazy bridge.
Scary.
You kind of gotta I think walk across to get to it, maybe.
Huh.
Either that or you got to cross
down.
Well,
it looks like, it looks like you can either go straight across it or you can go down into the valley and go across.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd walk across this bridge.
I'd probably have to go down and around.
But anyways, kind of a cool place that I want to go see because it's tied to King Arthur and stuff. And
he is a huge King Arthur fan.
Yeah. This castle actually has a path from it called King Arthur's Way, I think, or something like that. What is it called? I don't know, without spending too much time to look for it. Anyways, it's some kind of path. Oh, here it is. It's called it's just called Arthur's Way. And it actually leads from this castle to the next castle, which is actually called Cadbury Castle. And you can
Cadbury eggs?
Yeah, like Cadbury eggs.
Is that an actual name of a town or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this picture here just shows like the castle's actually not even there. No,
that's just a form of
This is just a huge mound. But apparently this huge mound has been there for like millennia. Okay? So they've actually researched this thing, and it's 18 acres on top of this thing, so it's massive.
So they basically built a small mountain.
Yeah, so it dates back to like the Bronze Age even, which is like about 2500 BC to about 800 BC, and then an Iron Age hill fort was like built on top of it, which that came after. So anyways, they've
so this was another added on thing.
Yeah, but they've figured out that like and the castle's no longer there anymore, right? But that would have been in the medieval period. But they have found stuff that like dates back to like as far back as like 3500 BC, which is just crazy. But when you looking at that picture, like somebody spent the time to build this massive mound, right? So you think about it, you built this. I mean, you're going to use it.
That's standing from way back, too.
Yeah, you're going to use that for generations because anything you build on the top of that, you're going to be able to see for like just miles and miles. I like how we were using
How did we do that?
I don't know. But anyways, it's kind of a cool thing to go see. And they don't necessarily, like, there's not really a whole lot of like architecture stuff there to see, but there's a lot of artifacts, and they have like a whole entire like museum that you can actually go through there and stuff with like all these like artifacts and stuff in it. Really cool. So I definitely want to go see that.
But don't expect to see a castle at this one because there's not actually one.
And then there's a bunch of other castles, that like as you go to various places, I'm sure there'll be castles nearby and stuff, because that's pretty much all they did in England for a while, and Ireland even, was just basically every like 5 feet they built a castle. They're everywhere. The next thing that I want to go see is actually like Nottingham, the town, the castle, the city of Loxley, and what's like Sherwood Forest. It's all kind of in this same area in like what they call the East Midlands. So like it's in like Nottinghamshire, and I forget what this one's in. Sheffield area? I don't know. It's all kind of in the same-ish area. And so anyways, like Nottingham is a very cool place. There's a lot of like stuff there that's like Robin Hood and stuff like that. And that is like my probably... Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up between those two legends, like which one I like more, whether it's Arthur or Robin Hood.
Didn't they say that the Legend of Arthur, they think it was like a combination of a bunch of different people?
Yeah, well, so Robin Hood probably actually is too.
You think so?
Based on what they've researched, it most likely is. And like the Legend of Robin Hood kind of like changed and formed over years too, even. But there's a castle in this place which is very cool. It's got a lot of actual tunnels because it's built on top of like a big like rock dome mound thing. I don't know, for lack of better description, but this castle has like all kinds of like tunnels and stuff, and like back escape ways out of the castle, which is kind of cool. But it was actually built in 1068. So this castle was actually used by Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham. So true.
Sorry, I could only think of the Disney film.
True-ish to legend, right? So but they were hiding out there, and Richard the Lionheart returned from the Crusades, and it was besieged by Richard, and it was captured, and then it's tied to the legend of Robin Hood, which is kind of probably somewhat truth, but mostly legend. At least the part of Richard and his brother John, that whole thing is actually quite accurate, actually, as to with John trying to take power while Richard was away at Crusades, and that was actually very that basically happened. So that's and then Prince John actually ended up becoming king after his brother Richard died, and he ended up being the king that lost what's known as the Avengian Empire. I probably didn't say that right, but anyways, that was the England that was England and the piece of France that was owned by William the Conqueror, because they came out of Normandy in France. So originally that was all part of England. Well, King John lost that piece of England, essentially. It got retaken by the French, and so he was kind of known as the crappy king, hence why when you go to the toilet you call it using the John.
Well, over there we don't normally call it that over here.
But anyways, so that's cool. I'd like to go see all that. And then there's Locksley. There's a piece in Locksley that's kind of there's some not a whole lot of stuff there, but there's a couple things
pretty.
Here and
there.
there.
I will say that it's a very pretty landscape.
Seeing Robin Hood stuff. Anyways, there's it's built on a river called Locksley River, and it is definitely a very pretty place to see, and it's just kind of one of those off the beaten path kind of places that I want to go to. So, and then this next thing is really cool. So this is called the Major Oak, and they think that if Robin was a real person, and the Locksley piece of it is in later stories he was referred to as Robert of Locksley. That's kind of who they tied him to. That he was this kind of duke, not duke, I guess, but maybe a baron or something, some kind of low-ish royal class that went off to fight in the Crusades and then came back. And in the time between when he got back and when King Richard got back, he was actually kind of fighting against King John, and they think that this was his kind of hideout because he, King John took away all of his land and titles and stuff. So, but this is the Major Oak, which they think is where him and his band of merry men would have hung out, but I can't remember how old they said this thing is. Let's see. It says it's about 800 to 1,000 years old. And that was in 2014. It has a girth of 33 feet, a canopy of 92 feet.
And it's estimated to be 23 tons?
Yeah, it's estimated to weigh 23 tons. This tree is massive.
Wait, I see poles in the ground. Are they trying to make sure it doesn't fall?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's so big, and these branches are super heavy. Because you look at these trees back here in the back, these are normal sized trees. These are big, full grown adult trees. And you can see how much bigger this thing is.
Well, they're trying to keep it alive, so they probably take good care of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a well cared for tree. But apparently in 2014 it was voted England's Tree of the Year. So it's a massive tree. I mean, and obviously it's been there for 1,000 years or something, which is crazy. Anyways, I'd love to go see that because that would be very cool to see, and it's again tied to the Robin Hood legend. Then there's places like London. Like I want to go, and there's a bunch of historical stuff in London, right? Like, the Parliamentary Building and Big Ben and all that. Just all the stuff. And I didn't want to list all that stuff because it would take forever, because there's so much stuff in London to see, right? You could spend probably a month just in London trying to see all the stuff that's there and still not even see all of it, honestly. Some of the other stuff that I'd like to go see that's, outside of that, there's this, and Becca's looking at it now, this picture, and to her it probably just looks like a big ditch, which is essentially kind of what it is, actually.
It's called a dike?
This is called Offa's Dyke.
Where's all the water?
And so, see, it's not that kind of dike. This was built by they think it was built by King Offa, actually, who was one of the kings of Mercia. And it was built by him to basically kind of like be the barrier between like England, Saxon domain.
Okay, so they kind of used it kind of like the Great Wall of China?
Yeah, and they built it between there and Wales to keep like the Welsh, aka the Britons, in Wales.
So it's a wall.
They didn't want to deal with them.
It's an earth wall.
Yeah, it's a giant earth wall. So originally this thing would have been just, it would have been this ditch, but then on the England side...
They would have had the wooden pike thing sticking out of the top?
Yes. So it would have had this huge pike-looking thing sticking out.
It's much deeper than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So in Mercia, it would have had this big hill, which would have had a wall with like spiky, posts sticking out. And then in the Wales side was like this giant ditch that they would have had to cross into the ditch and then climb up this and then get over, right, to get in. So it was this big, protective area. It would have been built there, and this thing was built back in the like mid 700s, all the way to like roughly.
It was up to 60 feet wide.
Yep.
And 8 feet high.
Yep, that's the earthworks
Holy
part.
Cow.
And then there would have been a wall on top. It's kind of crazy, like, and it's 82 miles long.
I really didn't want to leave them away in, did
so it's crazy. Kind of cool to, go see that and be like, this was the original border between Wales and England, So that's pretty cool. Then there's this. This is Loch Ness. So you can't...
Nessie.
Yeah, so you can't go to England, Scotland, Ireland area without making a stop at Loch Ness, right? And this castle that you can kind of see in the foreground here, this is... I'm going to try to pronounce this. It's called Urquhart Castle, I believe. Probably got that wrong. But it's like the ruins of a castle. So again, you go to see one thing, there's another thing to see there too. Kind of some cool stuff, and obviously everyone kind of knows like the history of Loch Ness, right?
Well, everybody knows about Nessie.
Why you'd want to go see that, obviously. So along with that, because it's a famous place to go see, there's other famous places that I'd love to go see, like Stonehenge, right? We've all seen that one. Hadrian's Wall.
Another wall.
Yeah, so this is actually the wall that the Romans built. This is the first wall they built, mind you, to divide between Scotland and England, or what was, I don't know, Rome essentially at that point, because everything was Rome, right? So on one side you had Scotland, the Scottish people, and on the other side you had the Roman, the English, although they weren't English at that time, but the British Roman citizens, right? And this was it would have been much taller than this originally, because obviously you could just like walk over this. It would have been way taller, and every mile or so they had like these like forts built along it, and they would have stationed a garrison in there. And yes, it would have it was measured in miles, because as much as people hate to admit it, the Romans invented miles. So miles is actually a Roman thing. But yeah, this was built, I think, around the year 122 AD. And then after it was constructed, they built another wall that was further north. I'll show you that picture here. It's on a map. So they built this Antonian wall, and there's actually not really much left of that one. So Hadrian's Wall was actually like
I've actually heard of Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah, it was way better constructed. Way better. That's, I don't know. That sentence doesn't make any sense. It was
together.
It was more well constructed. There you go. But the Antonian Wall, like the remnants of it, it's like there's a ditch, and there are some pieces of the wall there, but it was built like 20 years after, or started, I guess, 20 years after, and it's on a much thinner section of the area, and basically they tried to essentially take this, from Scottish people that were up here. I don't know if they were actually Scottish at that point yet. I don't know if that culture had actually formed, but tried to take it from the tribes that lived up in this region, and it ended up actually not working out very well. So this wall was actually soon abandoned, and they went back to using Hadrian's Wall.
Well, that's probably why that one doesn't exist anymore, because people tore it down after they abandoned it.
Yeah, and so Hadrian's Wall, everyone thinks is like this impenetrable barrier. It really wasn't. It was actually kind of like they used it to basically. It didn't necessarily keep the people in Scotland out of England, but it kept the massive armies from being able to march into England, right?
Yeah, they would have to hop over the wall.
Oh, they'd have to siege the wall and break it down. But trade flowed through the wall all the time. Like they traded with the Scottish people all the time. Then there's this. Ooh, that's cool. This is called newgrange.
I've never seen that before.
This is actually what's known as a megalithic structure. And there's several megalithic structures, but this one, let's see, it dates to the Neolithic period of around 3200 BC, and this is actually a tomb. And
it's a tomb?
Yeah, and it's massive, right?
It's like a football stadium.
I know, it's crazy, and the way it's like presented, it looks new almost, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. They actually found this thing buried.
In the earth?
In the earth, yeah. It was. They were like, "Why does this hill look so weird?" And they kind of like started digging, and they're like, "Oh, because this hill is actually this." So,
well, so much for hiding it.
Yeah, and it's super cool. I'm glad they like unearthed it, and it's got these big, huge, like what are known as standing stones, which again, that's what Stonehenge is standing stones, right? So they were doing that even back then. But outside of like these famous ones like this, there's slightly lesser known ones that I want to go see. So we talked about Stonehenge. There's actually another circle of what do they call it? Stone circle called Castle Rig. And this stone circle actually predates Stonehenge, they think, by about what was it?
Like 100 years.
I think it was. I want to say it was like 200 or 300 years before Stonehenge. So it's even older than Stonehenge, and not a lot of people really know about it. But here's kind of like an aerial view of it. It's just
weird. Big, huge... It has like an entryway into it.
Yeah. So there's no telling what it actually originally was. Like
probably a sacrificial area or something.
Could be.
Or like a place where the king would sit in that opening area and watch the people battle or something, like maybe. A Colosseum type thing.
Maybe. It was probably more of a religious type thing.
It could be.
Because a lot of this kind of stuff they have actually figured out that it was tied to like religious beliefs and like how they would tell like times of the year, or how they would.
I was about to say it looks like a clock.
Yeah, kinda. So like Stonehenge they think was actually used for that, And this doesn't necessarily have the top stones on it, and it's got way more like stones around it. So it was obviously a place of, importance, but it's kind of hard to tell what they really truly use these for. And I'm sure there's many different theories on it, but a lot of times they have tied it back to like it's usually some kind of like dual purpose type thing where it's religious, but it's also like how they would forecast like when they're supposed to plant crops and stuff like that. So but this one's kind of unique because there's actually a couple of like mountains in the background of this. So like Stonehenge is just in this big flat field with nothing around really. This one, there's like this really nice like landscape in the background, so it makes it cooler to go see, in my opinion. Then we were talking about,
well, maybe if it was for a religious reason, maybe they put it surrounded by nature.
True. Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of stone circles though, like in that area, and I'm sure there's like, there's probably so many more that they haven't actually even found yet, right?
Probably.
But like when you like really like learn about the history of these things and like the fact that,
well, if it was religious, they may have been like churches, so they put them up everywhere.
Yeah. So it was actually,
and if it was a calendar, then they put them everywhere.
Probably built by the Druids, they think. So that was like the high priest type people of the ancient Gaelic, Celtic communities that were in Ireland and England. So anyways, yeah, there's probably dozens more that they haven't even found, that are like buried just in, who knows where they're at, right? So going along with Hadrian's Wall, like everyone knows the wall because it's famous, but there's actually like forts built along the wall I mentioned, and some of them are still standing, and one of them, we now call it, I think it's called Housted's Roman Fort. That's, because English gotta be English and call it something else. But originally it was, I believe they said it was referred to as Rekovicum, and it's basically just this big, huge Roman fort that's right up near where the wall is, and it was built in the...
So that was like their barracks?
Yeah, it was built in like the 120 AD area. And there's all this, like this is like the granary, and that's still like actual Roman construction. Like they didn't reconstruct any of this. This is just like how it was. And it's crazy that it's built like just that precise, like it's wild to me how like the Romans built all their stuff. And then there's this here. I think this is actually the latrines that they had. Yeah, this is the latrine house. And so like just very cool to go see this like old Roman fort from like, basically the 2nd century AD, And then one of the last few things that I have on my list is actually in Ireland. Here's this giant stone. So this is known as the Stone of Destiny. There's apparently a Stone of Destiny in, I believe it's actually in Scotland somewhere. I think it might even be at Edinburgh Castle or something. But basically there's these Stones of Destiny, and they're used for coronation purposes, which is like the crowning of a king. Well, this one is located on what's called the Hill of Tara, and this is the Stone of Destiny of Ireland, and it's where they would crown the High King of Ireland whenever they would crown a High King. There wasn't always a High King of Ireland. A lot of times it was just each little like area had its own king, and every so often there would be like one king that would kind of rise to the top essentially, and they would all these various kingdoms would get together, and they would decide to crown like one main guy.
Is that metal surrounding it?
No, that's
rock.
That's rock. And I'm not even going to try to attempt to pronounce like what this is called.
So I wonder how they chose which rock would be that rock.
It's just like a giant standing stone, essentially. You know, they found it somewhere and they kind of shaped it into this like tall like mound and then kind of buried it and then stuck these other stones kind of around it. I don't know when they would have necessarily when they would have placed these stones here, but you can see like they seem fairly like worn. But I don't really know, like, you know, are those new or are those old? I don't know. I'd have to really dig into it and read up on it.
They chose a standing stone as like symbolism for the connection between earth and heaven or something like that for the king to take over. Like, it was maybe a religious reason. Because, I mean, you have Stonehenge and you have that other thing, and they're all standing stones.
Yeah. And
you said that those were maybe for religious reasons, so I wonder if this is the same sort of thing.
Well, it's kind of the same. This one had a specific purpose that we know of anyways, right? But honestly, they've actually, apparently, according to what I'm seeing here, this Hill of Tara consists of numerous monuments and earthworks dating all the way back to the Neolithic period. So, like, you know, it dated pretty far back, right? Anyways, yeah, it's got a bunch of stuff on it that dates pretty far back, because actually in this picture you can see this this thing here in the background, this like that these people are standing on, is called thing? Yeah, that's actually called the Mound of Hostages. So there's actually another picture of that right here. So this is the Mound of Hostages. Obviously this iron thing's not original, right? Just that's to keep people out, clearly. But you can kind of see this, like, it was this mound with a stone structure facade, and I don't know what was necessarily inside of that.
Looks like a prison.
Well, yeah, but you got to remember that.
No, I mean, even without that being there.
Maybe.
It looks like either a tomb or a prison.
It was probably a tomb. Oh, actually, it says it was a passage tomb.
I don't know if I'd want to be buried in a tomb called the Mound of Hostages.
Here's kind of a cutaway view of what it looks like.
Huh.
You would have entered in here, and there was like this chamber back in there, and then everything was like dirt mounded over, essentially.
Weird.
They built a lot of structures like that back then in the Neolithic period. Because it was an easy way of making it look good, right? You know, because you had this stone slab structure, and then you're like, you know what, let's just make it round by covering it over with dirt. But yeah, that's kind of the last thing that was on my list. Clearly there's a lot more stuff that you could go see, you know, in that area. I'm sorry if I rambled on way too much about history and got boring. I'm very passionate about history, as you can tell.
There were a couple of places, like the one castle in that thing that looked like a football field, those two...
Newgrange?
Yeah, those two look really cool to me.
And Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah, those two, I was like, I actually kind of like these.
Yeah. So the next one we're going to do is going to be Becca's dream vacation.
Yep.
So I'm sure she'll be passionate about hers as well. So that episode will probably be kind of long as well. So
I hope not. I'm going to try not to have that like super long.
I'm sorry that this one went on so long, but I probably rambled a bit too long and got far too distracted on certain things.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our Any Thoughts podcast. That was really good, Dan. I really enjoyed those topics, and there were a couple of things in there that I really enjoyed hearing about. And Dan is very passionate about history, as you guys have probably realized. So thank you so much for the history lesson, Dan, and making it interesting and having some pictures for us to look at. Next week is my turn, and the country that I will be covering begins with the letter J. So let's see if you guys can figure that out in the comments. So until next time, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Meow. Simon, you want to end the podcast?